Okay guys, let's resume. So what we want to discuss in this session, and it's probably the most important session of this morning, and that's this Unit 4. Now it's important to know what the unit is about. It's looking at different decision-making processes or approaches. We're not looking at profitability here. We're looking at different approaches to help us in our decision making. Okay, so we're doing some analysis now. We want to use different tools to help us make a decision in terms of an investment, and we're going to look at a property investment in particular, and we also want to make the right decision. So first off, we should be using a tool that is recognized and probably the most accurate, and secondly, one that we're familiar with, one that we understand and we are able to use. Okay, so if you look at the start of the unit there are a couple of traditional approaches that are mentioned. The first off is investment value. So all that does is look at your purchase price and then what you sold the property for and compare the two. Okay. There are a couple others there as well. Best fit. So it looks at a whole lot of different criteria to see whether they actually fit the criteria that you're looking for. Okay, not a very accurate one. Okay, not a very technical one either. There's one at the bottom there called the payback period. Now I know that if you look at Blackboard under Unit 4, I've actually put there's a whole calculation, a payback period calculation there. Yeah, I think there's a payback period calculation there. You know, if you want to have a look at it, don't get too bogged down by it. We're not going to test you on it. It's just out of interest. But it basically looks at how long it takes you to earn sufficient income out of this investment to pay your original investment back. Okay. The one we're most interested in is or are interested in are these modern capital budgeting approaches. And the one that we're most interested in is discounted cash flow. Okay. Okay, so there are a couple of modern ones. Discounted cash flow being one of them, and the other one, internal rate of return. Now there's a discussion that I also uploaded. It's a piece of analysis that was done in the States on the different types of capital budgeting approaches that are used in the marketplace. And I think this piece of research is fairly recent. So, and how popular each of them are. And it's quite interesting to note that despite its shortcomings, internal rate of return tops those different approaches. Okay, and the second one is discounted cash flow. And the reason internal rate of return probably tops the approaches is because it's probably been used for so long and everyone is very familiar with it. So if you're looking at institutional investors, it's probably one that they've employed for decades and they're familiar with it and they feel comfortable with it. So they continue using it. Okay, and it has a couple of shortcomings, and you'll be able to read about those shortcomings in that article. I've also mentioned a few of those shortcomings in the notes. So it's not a very accurate measure. Discounted cash flow is a far more accurate measure. Okay, and this is becoming more and more popular as investors realize that there are these shortcomings in IRR and that this is a more accurate measure. Okay, so discounted cash flow is becoming more and more popular. There are a couple of others there that you'll notice, and the reason why they're not that popular is because they're quite sophisticated and they're quite difficult to understand. And the one is sensitivity analysis. And because it's low on the chart there, doesn't mean to say it's not a very accurate or a very important type of analysis. It is very, very good. So generally what you do a discounted cash flow analysis, and then you do some sensitivity analyses on top of that. So you look, if you change some of the factors, how the returns are affected. So this really looks at sensitivity if you change some of the factors. Okay, I won't go into too much detail about it, but what is quite useful is that if you want to study a little bit more about sensitivity analysis, is that Excel is really brilliant in this area. I couldn't believe the functionality of Excel in this particular area. It is absolutely amazing. It can help you set up charts and set up graphs and all sorts of things to show how sensitive certain inputs are if you change some of the inputs. Okay. The other one is real options. And the reason why it's also low on the list is because it's a very complex mathematical type of analysis and not widely understood. Okay, so real options is actually very useful because of two aspects. And the one is that it helps you make the decision. Okay, it helps you make the decision, but not only that, it helps you the timing of the decision. Now, real options involves working out a whole lot of options, and it means that you must understand optionality, and there's a lot of maths involved in that. So that's probably why it's not a very popular method. But it's very useful in that it helps you decide, and also it helps you with the timing. And it's generally used with big capital projects that take years and years. Something like our power stations. This should have been employed in Kusile and Medupi. And in fact, with Eskom now, they should be employing it right now to decide when they're going to start retiring the power stations. Okay. It's a very, very useful piece of analysis. Okay, so so what we're going to do is, I'm not going to talk about any of the others. I'll briefly refer to RRR towards the end, because what I've done there were some questions in class, in the full-time, part-time classes, about this. So I said to them, why don't you go and set up an Excel spreadsheet with the problem we're going to deal with now, and work out the RRR of both those investments. And I thought, you know what? What's the likelihood of them going home and actually doing it? Probably not very good. So I thought, okay, well, I'll do it. So I'll set it up for you there. So it's there. So what you do, you'll notice on that Excel spreadsheet that I've used 12% at the top. And you'll notice that you've got a result for the first investment and a result for the second investment. All you do is you change this, and you see how these change. Okay, so you change this, and you see how these change. And then you, basically RRR is when net present value equals naught. Okay, and the RRR is the rate of return that makes net present value equal naught. That's all you have to know about it. It's not, you know, it might be too difficult to understand, but internal rate of return is the rate of return that makes the net present value equal to naught. So in that spreadsheet I put up there, if you want to work out what the RRR is for the first project, what you have to do is you have to get this very close to naught. Okay, it's very hard to get it to exactly naught, but get close to naught, like a couple of hundred out on either side, plus or minus. But all you do is you change this on the spreadsheet and see how this is affected, and see what you get to. I think for the first one you get about, I think it's about 20-odd%, and the second one's about 30-odd%, I think. Something like that. But it's a worthwhile exercise just to understand what internal rate of return. So it's the rate of return that makes the net present value equal 0. Okay. So we're going to leave that at that. What we're going to do now is we're going to concentrate on this. Okay. Discounted cash flow. Any questions about this so far? Sorry. These are basically the important ones, okay, in that article that you read. These two are not so widely used because they're quite complex and quite difficult to understand. But once you understand them, they are incredibly useful. Okay? This one is very widely used, but is falling out of favor because it's not very accurate. This one is becoming more popular because it's the most accurate of the lot. Okay. So this is the one we're going to concentrate on. This is the one that's going to be examined at half year. 15 out of the 50 marks coming from this. Okay, so you must understand it. And at the end of the year, you're going to get tested again. Okay. Any questions before we go into it? Okay. Okay. So we're going to concentrate on this. And remember, it's a decision-making approach. It's a tool that you can use to make a decision. So what we're doing is we've got two properties we're looking at, and we're going to do some discounted cash flow for both the properties, and we're going to work out which one is more valuable than the other. Okay, that is the idea. So when you get a question like this, it'll be a question, and you'll get a whole lot of data, and you must compute the net present value of both, and then at the bottom you must make a statement about which property investment is more valuable to you than the other. Okay. Quite often in an exam, what they do is the students work out the net present value of both investments, and they forget to write down which one they're going to choose, and that's worth a couple of marks. Okay. So compute both net present values of both properties, and then you must make the statement at the bottom about which one you're going to choose. Okay. So first off, present value is equal to, future value equals present value 1 plus r to the n. Are you guys familiar with that? Okay. So your future value equals your present value raised by the interest rate. 1 plus r is the interest rate, and that's the annual rate, to the power of the number of years. Now, it's very important that these two correspond. In other words, if you're using if you're going to use this, you're looking at the number of years here, this must be an annual rate. If you're looking at 6 months here, okay, then this must be a 6-month rate. So in other words, if n equals 3 and it's 3 years, then r must be 12% per annum. Okay. If n then changes, say n changes to, you're looking at every 6 months, then you're looking at 6 periods. You're not looking at 3 periods, you're looking at 6 periods there. Okay. So it's every half year you're looking at. And what you must do to this is you must divide by 2. So there it's multiplied by 2, and here it's divided by 2. So then we get 6%. Okay. 6% every 6 months. If you're looking at quarterly, okay, so the quarterly is every 3 months, so it'll be 12 periods, okay, it's quarterly, and then this will be divided by 4, so it'll be 3%. Okay. So these two must correspond. If you're looking at monthly, then obviously it's 3 times 12 is 36, and then it's 12 divided by 12 is 1%. Okay. They must just correspond. Okay, if we rearrange this equation here, so all we've done is just taken this part here to the other side. Okay. So it's future value divided by 1 plus r to the n equals the present value. And that's basically what we use to work out net present values. We take the future value and we discount it by the interest rate raised to the power of the number of years. And if you want to make it even better for later, it's equal to the future value multiplied by 1 over 1 plus r to the n. And if any of you have actually been through that example that I put up there, that discounted cash flow example, this here is called the discount factor. Okay. So in an exam, we're not going to expect you to work out all of this. Okay, this will take you too long. So what we do is we give you a discount factor. And then all you do is multiply the future value by the discount factor, and it'll give you the present value. Okay. So we look, just for example, if we look at this example over here, say we're discounting 100 there. So it's 100 over 1 plus r, which is, 0.12. So we're using 12% to the 1. If we're doing this one over here, the future value is 100, and the discount factor for 12% over 1 year is 0.893. We actually give it to you. 0.893. Okay. So this here, 12% over 1 year, that's what it is. So it's 1 divided by that equals this. That's what the discount factor is. Do you guys understand that? So instead of asking you to do this whole equation here, all this sum here, can get quite tedious after a while, and you can make a lot of mistakes. We're giving you this discount factor. Okay. We're giving it to you. So you multiply what you're trying to discount by the discount factor. You guys understand that? Okay, here's a very simple example where we buy a property for 1,000 Rand. So 1,000 Rand goes out of your account, okay? And every year, so these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, it's a 5-year investment. Every year we're going to get rental of 100 Rand. Okay, 100, 100, 100, 100. And at the end of the period, we still get our rental of 100 Rand, but we then sell it for 1,200. Okay. So say, for example, we're using a 12% rate of return, or a discount rate of 12%. So what we have to do is we have to bring all of these to present value. And this as well, of course. So we bring them all to present value. And if we're looking at a second investment, we do exactly the same. And then we can compare apples with apples. Because if you had to look at 2 projects, and that's the one project, and then you have the second project, it's very difficult to make a decision and say the one is more valuable than the other one. Okay. Their rates might be different because the risk might be different. Okay, so the discount rate might be different. The escalations might be different. Okay, in fact, in the example, the escalations are different. So it's very difficult to say if you just looked at them that the one is better than the other one. So we have to bring them all down to a present value, and then we can compare those 2 present values, and then we can make our decision. It's quite useful to actually, when you get a problem like this, is to actually draw this up. And then you can see exactly what you're doing. So we'll talk about escalations just now, but when you get escalations, you actually work out the escalation, you put it here. So if it's 5%, the first one will be 105, and the second one will be 105 plus a rate. So it'll be a little bit more, probably 107.5, something like that. And you put it all there, and you can see exactly what it looks like. Otherwise, you've got to try and visualize all of this in your mind. So in your answer book, it's quite useful to actually read through the problem and then draw up your chart like that. And do it for both of them. So do it for the one, and just below, do it for the other one. And then you know exactly, you can look at it and you know exactly what you need to do to work out the net present value. And by net present value, we mean there's going to be some positives here and there are going to be some negatives. And we're going to add them together and they're going to balance out. Okay, they're going to give us a figure eventually. Here we see, here's a negative. Okay, it goes out of your pocket. And the other ones are all coming into your pocket. Okay, so that's why it's net present value. Because there's going to be there are a couple of positives there and there's one negative. Okay. Any questions about these equations here before we start? Particularly this thing here, this discount factor. So we're not going to ask you to do all these calculations, okay? Because some of you might not have the right calculator as well. That's the other thing. Some of you might only have a phone. So at least you can do a multiplication. You know, you might not be able to do this, for example. So you need a financial calculator for that. Or at least a scientific one. So we call this the discount factor. So what we've done, we've worked this out for you, and all you need to do is take the future value and you multiply it by the discount factor. Okay. Okay, and as I say, it's very useful to draw up those charts at the start. Are there any questions about the basics before we get into the problem itself? Because I'm going to ask you, I'm going to do one, I'm going to ask you to do the second one, okay? And then we'll see how we go. Okay, let's go. Okay, so the problem is, and in fact this comes from last year's October-November exam. It's a question from the exam. So this is what they're going to look like. It will be no different. It'll be something like this. Except that the marks will be slightly different. You can see for the end of year last year, because they'd already done one in June, okay, so we didn't give them as many marks for this one. This was only out of 10. Because in June they had one out of, I think it was out of 50. So the whole thing was net present value in June. So for your exam in June, the net present value of the one building, or the one building will be 6, and the other building will be 6, and then the decision will be 3. So it'll be a total of 15 marks. Okay, so it's worthwhile understanding this and knowing how to do this, because you can score 15 marks quite easily. It's a long way to doing well in the exam. Okay, so the problem is, a property trust is considering 2 office blocks in Cape Town. And one is situated in Steenberg and one is in Gardens. So first off, if you know the areas, you can think, well, which is going to be more valuable? But it's not as easy as that, because one might be a smaller building than the other, and in fact the rentals might be different as well. But anyway, so you've got an idea of the areas now. They're both similar. They're both similar sizes. They provide the same sort of facilities. Okay. So all we're interested in is the return, and we want to use a discount rate of 12%. That's very important. 12%. Okay. And time horizon only of 3 years. Okay. We're only going to look at 3 years. So we're going to hold this investment for 3 years. So first off, we can actually draw this thing. So we got 1 year, 2 year, 3 years. 1 year, 2 year, 3 years. I must tell you, it's very easy to make mistakes when you're doing these things. So you've got to be wide. In fact, when you go into the exam, it's probably not a bad idea if you're feeling really fresh to do this first, because you're feeling fresh and you can get straight into it. You know. So it might be an idea to do it first off. Okay, so it's a 3-year investment. Now let's look at Steenberg. So let's look at the first one. We're going to look at Steenberg first off. So the purchase price is 5 million. Okay, so we actually, 5 million goes out of our pockets at the start of the investment. And the rental for the first year is 480,000. So 480K there. There's an annual escalation of 5%. Okay, so the second year is going to be higher. So the escalation, so what you've got to do is you've got to take this and multiply it by, so it's 480 into 1 plus comma 005 to the 1. And that is equal to 504,000. Do you understand that? So there's an escalation of 5%. So you've got to increase this by a factor of 5%. Okay. Now, to get the third year, we've got to take 504 and increase that by a factor of 5%. And that comes to 529,200. Okay. Any problems with that? I mean, you can try it out on your computers as well if you want to have a look. So we've got an escalation of 5%. 5% there, and we've got an escalation of 5% there. Okay. So it just complicates the matter a bit, but it makes it more realistic. Because this is a very real sort of problem, or real scenario that you might be faced with. And 5% is a very typical escalation, I think, today, 5 or 6%. I think the second one we do here for the gardens one is 6%. Okay, so we escalate the rental by 5% for the second year, and then escalate it again by 5% for the third year. And then the expected sale price, so your guys in the back office, they've done some analysis. They reckon in 3 years' time, given the economy, the local economy and the South African economy, that we're going to be able to sell this thing for 5.75 million. So remember, that comes in. That comes into your pocket. 5.75 million comes into your pocket. Okay, so what we've got to do, we've got to discount each of these. Let's get a green one actually. We've got to discount each of these to present value. Okay, each of the rentals must be discounted to present value, and also the sale price, and then compared against the purchase price. Okay, so let's start. So let's start with the income first. So we take 480,000, and it says there, it gives you at 12%, the discount factor for 1 year is 0.893. 93, you multiply 2 out and you get 428,640. Okay. Now we discount 504,000. 504,000. Discount factor for 2 years is 797. 797, and you get a thing of 401,688. Then you take the third one, 529,200. Discount factor for 3 years is 712. And the result is 376,790. Okay, so that's discounting each of the rentals. Discounted the first year rental, that's the 1 year discount factor. Discounted the second year rental, that's the discount factor, 797. And discounted the third year rental, which is in the discount factor, 712. Okay, then what we do is add these up, and we get 1,207, 118. And that's the present value of cash flows. Present value of the cash flows. So we've only dealt with the cash flow so far. Now we can take off the purchase price. Remember, it's 5 million at the start. 5 million. And you do the sum there, and it's minus 3,792,882. You could have started off with the purchase price at the top, if you wanted to, because it is the first thing on the graph. You could have started like that as well if you wanted to. And then, of course, the very last thing we have to do is the sale of the property. So the sale of the property is 5750. 50. And remember, it's a 3-year discount factor, 712. And that's equal to 4094 000. And your result is 301,118. And that is your net present value for that property, which is Steenberg. That there. That is the net present value. So at a discount rate of 12% over a period of 3 years with escalation of 5%, that is your net present value. 301,118 Rand. So on its own, it doesn't mean a hell of a lot. Remember what we're doing? We're looking at different approaches to make comparisons. We've got 2 investments here, 2 property investments, 2 potential property investments. We just worked out the net present value of the one. We need to do it for the second one to compare the 2 to see which is more valuable. Okay, so on its own doesn't really mean a hell of a lot. But when we compare it to another one, we'll be able to see which is the more valuable. Are there any questions about this? Okay, in the exam you will be given these discount factors, eh? You will be given these, the 1-year discount factor, the 2-year discount factor, and the 3-year discount factor. And you'll get a 3-year scenario, just like this, very similar. Okay. Are there any questions? Would you guys like to do the gardens one? Or do you want me to do it on the board? You want to do it yourself? Okay. Do you guys want to do the second one, the gardens one? So the gardens one is, let's have a look at it first off. So we're going to draw it up here. The gardens one is an investment of 8 million. And the first month's income is 720,000. I won't work out, the escalation is 6%, so you have to work that out. And then the sale of the property is 11,250. And the same thing here. What we have to do is once we work these out, we have a discount back to present value.
What was the selling price?
11.25 million. Yeah, 11.25. So purchase price is 8 million. The first year's rental is 720K, escalation at 6%, and the sale price is 11.25 million. And if you follow the same method or methodology, see what net present value you guys get.
Okay, the discount rates are the same as on the previous one.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's the same, yeah. So the discount rate is 12%. So, yeah, the discount factors are exactly the same. Yeah. 893, 797, 712, yeah. Yeah. Anyone got a figure yet? Who's got a figure? That's right, yeah. Yeah. Who gets round about 1.837 million? Good. So it depends on your calculator. So it should be like around about 1.837 million. Guys, okay. So which one are we going to choose? We're going to choose the gardens investment because the net present value is greater. Okay. So that you must state that at the bottom of your at the end of your problem, because the question is here the decision regarding which office block to buy. So they want to know which building would you choose. Okay, that's the ultimate question. So you're going through a whole process here, and you're doing it for a reason, because you want to know which one you're going to choose. So I'm going to choose the gardens property because the net present value of the gardens property is higher than that of the Steenberg property. So don't just say which one you're going to choose. You must say why you're going to choose it, because the net present value of the one is higher than the other, and then you'll get 3 marks. Okay, if you just say it's higher, you say I'm going to choose the gardens one, you'll get 1 mark. But if you give the reason why, then you'll get another 2. So you must make that statement at the end. Okay, that I'm going to choose the gardens property because the net present value of the gardens property is higher than that of the Steenberg property. Now, if you go and do that internal rate of return problem on that spreadsheet that I gave you, if you work out the internal rate of return for this property, for the gardens Steenberg property, I think it's about 20%. I just want to show you why they use RRR so often. And this one over here, I think is about 30%. So if they're looking at a single property, they're not looking at one particular, they're not comparing 2 properties, they're looking at a single property, okay? and they have a required rate of return, say, of 12%, is their required rate of return. Okay, in other words, they will not look at any investment that produces less than a 12% return. That is their required rate. But anything higher than 12%, they will definitely take on. So, they will definitely take on the Steenberg property because it's 20%. The IRR is 20%. And they'll definitely take on the Gardens property because that's 30%. Okay. So this is why they use, or why they do the calculation of IRR. Okay. So they've got a required rate of return of 12%. That's the basis on which they work on all their investments. Anything less than 12, they're not interested. 12 and above, they're interested. This one is going to yield 20%, so yeah, we're interested in this one. And this one's going to yield 30%, well, we're interested in that one as well. Okay. If they've got to choose between one or the other, they'll obviously take the one with the higher IRR. Okay. So that's where they use internal rate of return. Now, obviously, with real estate investments, and particularly if they're looking at a portfolio of investments, they look at diversifying their portfolios. They look at diversifying their portfolios across area. So you wouldn't put all your eggs in one basket, say in Cape Town, for example, because you would have done very badly in the last couple of years. They spread it over the entire country. In fact, some of them even invest in countries overseas. Okay, so they spread their risk a bit. The other thing is that what they do is they spread their risk across different portfolio classes. So they might invest in residential, they might invest in commercial, they might invest in industrial, they might invest in vacant land, etc., etc. Okay. Okay, so that basically completes the session for today. Just in terms of going forward, so we've done 4 units in the first term. In the second term, we're going to do 3 units. We're going to do I think it's strategy. Yeah, investment strategy is the first one we're going to tackle when we come back on the 2nd of April. We're then going to look at the ownership entity, the different entities that you can own property in, and then eventually we're going to tackle tax. Okay, and that'll be the end of the semester. Other than that, you've got the essay due next Wednesday, 20th, midnight. If any day late thereafter, minus 10%, up to 7 days, then it's naught. So what I don't want is what we had last year, where I was marking essays, I think after I'd finished marking the exams. I know that was a bit of a mess last year, and I was marking some of the essays that were done in March, after the exam. So we don't want that this year. So what I guarantee you is that during your holidays you will get your marks. So when we come back on the 2nd of April, the first semester is behind us, and we're not going to talk about it again. 2nd of April we come back, yeah. The lectures start on 2nd of April, yeah. Not here, not for you guys, but full-time and part-time. Full-time, part-time. Classes on campus start on the 2nd of April. So, so we don't want to carry first semester over into second semester because it becomes, we can never move on then. Just like drags us back all the time. So finish your essays on time. It's not a huge task, 8 pages. So, and if you speak about something you're familiar with, then it's a lot easier. Okay, guys. That's it. Thanks very much for attending. Cheers.